Her phone went straight to voicemail at 6:17. Not rang once and cut off. Not poor signal, just off. Daniel stood in the kitchen with a wooden spoon still in his hand, steam rising from the pan on the stove. Garlic and butter were starting to brown, the smell rich and warm. The kind of smell that usually meant someone you loved would be sitting across from you in a few minutes. He stared at his screen. Call failed. He tried again, same thing. A small voice in his head said, "She told you there'd be no signal." Another voice said, "Her car isn't even out of the neighborhood yet." He set the spoon down slowly, heat still on under the pan, and walked back into the living room. Her suitcase had rolled across this floor less than 10 minutes ago. He could still see the faint line one of the wheels left in the rug fibers. Girls' weekend. Cabin. "No service. Don't freak out if you can't reach me," she'd said, laughing as she zipped up her jacket. She kissed him on the cheek, already half turned toward the door. He had smiled back like a man who believed his life made sense. Now the house felt like it was holding its breath. A soft vibration buzzed from the kitchen counter. Daniel froze. Another buzz. Not his phone, hers. Her iPad. She'd left it propped against the coffee machine, screen dark, case slightly open. He hadn't noticed it when she left. Or maybe he had, but his brain hadn't registered it as important. It buzzed again. A notification lit up the screen, bright against the dim kitchen. He told himself not to look. Told himself this was how trust worked. You didn't go digging for things that would hurt you. The screen lit again before he could turn away. "Can't wait to finally have you to myself this weekend." Daniel felt something drop in his chest. Not break, not explode. Drop. Like missing a step in the dark. The name above the message wasn't one of her friends. It wasn't a woman. Evan. He stood there, staring at the lock screen, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something harmless if he gave them time. Another buzz. "I booked the place under my name, just in case." Just in case what? Just in case her husband called the cabin? Just in case she forgot to lie? Just in case he still believed he mattered? His hand moved toward the iPad before he consciously decided to move it. His fingers felt cold, slightly numb, like they belonged to someone else. They shared passwords, always had. He knew her passcode the same way he knew the shape of her hand in his, without thinking. He unlocked it. The messages opened like a door that had never really been closed. Photos. Inside jokes, plans, dates. He scrolled once, twice, then faster, like ripping off a bandage that just kept going. A picture of a lake at sunset. "Wish you were here instead of him." Him. Daniel sat down hard at the kitchen table. The chair legs scraped loudly against the tile, the sound sharp and ugly. He flinched at the noise, like he'd broken something physical. He read a message from earlier that afternoon. He still thinks this is a girl's trip. Phone's going off tonight so he doesn't get suspicious. Daniel laughed, and the sound scared him. It wasn't loud, it wasn't even bitter. It was small, like air leaking out of something that had already been punctured. He put the iPad down, then picked it up again, then set it down. His heart was beating too fast now, thudding in his throat. He pressed his palm flat against the table to steady himself and noticed his hand was shaking. He looked around the kitchen like he had walked into the wrong house. 2 plates on the counter. A bottle of wine already open, breathing. Her glass with a faint pink print from her lipstick. She had leaned across this counter and kissed him goodbye. He could still feel the ghost of it on his cheek. He looked back at the screen. 3 months of messages. 3 months of late meetings, team dinners, girls' nights. 3 months of him telling friends, "She's been so busy lately." He zoomed in on one photo of her. A selfie. Hair messy, cheeks flushed, wearing a hoodie he didn't recognize. She was smiling in a way he hadn't seen at home in a long time. He stared at that smile until his vision blurred. Not from tears. from trying to make sense of something that didn't want to make sense. He whispered one word, barely audible in the quiet kitchen. "Why?" There was no answer. Just the low hum of the refrigerator kicking on behind him, and the iPad screen, still lit up in his hands, telling him a story about his own marriage that he had never been meant to read. Saturday morning, Daniel woke up before the sun. Not because he felt rested. Because his body had decided sleep was a luxury it could not afford anymore. He lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom he had shared with Olivia for years. The same soft gray paint she picked. The same framed photo of them at Cannon Beach, smiling into wind, sand clinging to their ankles like proof they had once been real. He tried to remember the last time he felt safe in this room. His chest tightened. His mind kept replaying the message. He still thinks this is a girl's trip. It was the casual cruelty of it that haunted him. Not hatred, not rage, just a clean, confident assumption that her husband would remain a background character. Daniel turned his head toward Olivia's side of the bed. The sheets were smooth, cold. Her pillow still held the faint scent of a perfume he had never been able to name properly. It used to calm him. Now it felt like evidence. He got up quietly and walked barefoot into the kitchen. The iPad was still on the counter where he left it, face down, like a weapon he had chosen not to touch for a few hours. He made coffee the way he always did. Same mug, same routine. But his hands trembled slightly when he poured the water. He kept telling himself to slow down. Breathe, think. This is not a movie, this is your life. The coffee dripped. The house stayed silent. Outside, Seattle was still gray, still wet, still pretending nothing had changed. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, opened his laptop and created a folder. He named it simply, Weekend. Not revenge, not divorce, not Olivia. Weekend, because that was all it took. One weekend to turn his marriage into a case file. He began organizing screenshots into subfolders. Messages, photos, bookings, transfers. He had done this before at work. Evidence did not matter unless it was structured. A pile of facts could still be ignored. A timeline could not. He paused when he saw one photo in the thread. Olivia in a red dress. Not the one she wore on anniversaries. Not the one she wore to weddings. A different red, a sharper red. Like it belonged to a version of her he had not been invited to meet. His throat tightened again, and for a moment he felt something dangerously close to grief. He wanted to hate her. But the truth was worse. He missed the woman he thought he married. He missed the feeling of being chosen. That is what humiliation really was, not the affair itself. The realization that someone you loved had chosen to make you small. The iPad buzzed again. Daniel did not flinch this time. He turned it over. A new message preview lit the screen. Morning. You up? Daniel stared at it, then slowly unlocked the iPad. He should not have. He did anyway. The thread opened. Evan. Morning. You up? Olivia replied almost instantly. Yes, just woke up. He is clueless. Daniel's jaw tightened so hard it hurt. He is clueless. She was using him like a piece of furniture, something stable, something useful, something you forget is even in the room. Evan sent another message. Send a pic, I miss you. There was a pause. A few seconds. Then a photo appeared. A close-up selfie of Olivia, hair messy, cheeks flushed, wearing a hoodie Daniel had never seen. She was smiling in a way she had not smiled at him in months. Daniel stared at her face until it started to blur. Not because of tears, because his eyes felt like they were refusing to process it. He put the iPad down. He stood up, walked to the sink, and gripped the edge until his knuckles turned white. He forced himself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. He had to stay ahead of his own emotions. If he let anger drive, he would crash the whole situation before he learned everything he needed to know. And the truth was, he did not just want to know. He needed to understand what he was protecting now. his future, his finances, his sanity. He returned to the table and opened their shared calendar. Olivia's trip was blocked off with a neat label. Girls' weekend, no location, no address. But Daniel had already seen the booking confirmation. Luxury lakeside retreat. He searched it. A simple search brought up the listing. Photos of a cabin with a hot tub, dock, and a living room that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. 2 hours east. He stared at the photos longer than he should have. He imagined her there. Bare feet on polished wood. Wine glasses clinking. Laughter in the steam of the hot tub. And he imagined himself here. Seattle rain, empty bed, cold pillow. A tiny thought slipped into his mind. She is not just cheating, she is replacing you. That thought made his stomach twist. Because it was not dramatic, it was quiet. It felt like a truth his body already knew before his mind caught up. His phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Made it. No service here. Love you. Daniel stared at the screen. Love you. He imagined her typing that while the iPad stayed on because she forgot or did not care enough to shut it off. His fingers hovered. He typed back. Love you too. Have fun. He hit send. Then he stared at the message bubble like it was a line in a script he had never auditioned for. He felt dirty. Not because he lied, because he had to pretend he was still the husband she respected. He closed his eyes and let the feeling wash through. The humiliation, the anger, the sadness. He let them exist without letting them control him. Then he opened his laptop again and went deeper. He searched Evan Carter. Not on social media first, that would be too easy, too surface. He searched public business records, LinkedIn, company registrations, anything that could tell him who this man was and why Olivia had chosen him. Evan's LinkedIn profile appeared. Consultant, startup advisor, real estate development. And then Daniel saw something that made his pulse shift. Evan had listed a company name that Daniel recognized. Vantage Ridge Partners. Daniel's work had intersected with that name once. A firm known for aggressive acquisitions, messy deals, money moving quickly. Daniel leaned back. His mind ran through possibilities. Olivia worked in marketing for a mid-sized tech company. She was smart, ambitious, always talking about networking, stepping into bigger rooms. Had she met Evan through work? Had she been chasing more than an affair? He clicked through Evan's connections. Then he saw her. Olivia Mercer. She was connected to him. Not just in private messages, publicly. Her profile had liked one of his posts months ago. Daniel felt a cold ripple move through him. This was not some random weekend fling. This was a planned overlap. She had been building proximity, maintaining a second life in daylight. He looked at her profile, then at their wedding photo sitting on the shelf in the living room. It felt like two separate realities. He realized something else. If she had turned off her phone, it was not just to avoid him. It was to control the narrative so she could claim no signal, no proof, no trail. But the iPad was a trail she forgot to burn. Daniel stared at the screen and whispered a single word, barely audible. Receipts. That was what mattered. Not feelings, not promises. Receipts. He opened their bank statements. He had already noticed the monthly transfer of $200 labeled consulting. He dug into it. He found the destination account, the routing number, the business name. Carter Advisory Group. He searched that. A basic website, clean, professional, no faces, just words. But Daniel knew this type of site, a polished front for a business that could be anything behind it. He scrolled the transactions again. $200 was just the recurring payment. There were also irregular charges, a boutique hotel in Portland, a restaurant in Bellevue, a spa in Leavenworth. Each charge was small enough to hide inside normal spending, but together they formed a pattern. Daniel felt his chest tighten again, because the pattern matched something he remembered. Those were weekends Olivia had claimed she was with coworkers, conferences, team retreats. Daniel had believed her. He had even encouraged her. Work hard, network, you deserve it. He had been helping her build the lie. A bitter laugh slipped out of him, sharp and short. Then he stopped, because he heard a sound. Not in the house, in his mind. A small voice that sounded like the part of him that still wanted to hope. Maybe it is not what it looks like. Maybe Evan is a client. Maybe she is doing consulting. Maybe those messages are jokes. Daniel stared at the iPad again. He still thinks. He is clueless. No. The hope in him was not innocent. It was fear. Fear of accepting the truth. Fear of acting. Fear of becoming the man who ends a marriage. He swallowed hard and forced himself to stay with reality. He opened a new document and began writing a timeline. Month 1. First hotel charge. First message thread. Month 2. Second weekend. More photos. More joking about him. Month 3. Cabin booking. Monthly transfer. The timeline stretched longer than Daniel expected. It did not stop at 3 months. When he scrolled further back in the message thread, he found older messages. 6 months, 8 months, a year. Daniel's hands went cold. He had to read one message 3 times to make sure he understood it. Olivia had typed months ago. I hate lying to him, but it is easier than fighting. Easier, a year, a full year of dinners, holidays, family gatherings, birthday gifts, shared beds. A year of her living 2 lives while he lived one. Daniel felt something break inside him quietly, not in a dramatic way, like a thread snapping. He stood up and walked to the bathroom, splashed water on his face. He looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from a kind of sleeplessness that felt deeper than missing rest. He stared at the wedding ring on his finger. It looked heavier than it used to. He thought of Olivia's hand sliding into his when they got married, the way she had squeezed, like she meant it. He realized he did not know when she stopped meaning it. He did not know when she started planning this second life. And that uncertainty did something dangerous. It made him want to confront her immediately, to force the truth out of her mouth, like pulling a splinter out of skin. But Daniel knew himself. If he confronted her now, he would do it from raw emotion. And raw emotion was what people used against you. He needed control, he needed strategy, he needed evidence that could not be denied, twisted, or minimized. He needed to protect himself. He left the bathroom and returned to the kitchen. The iPad buzzed again. "Evan, when can you call? I want to hear your voice," Olivia replied. "Not now. He is home. I told you, phone is off. That is why the iPad is on." Daniel's stomach turned. She had not forgotten. She had chosen this. She had turned off her phone to avoid leaving a trail, but she still needed connection, so she used the iPad. She thought the iPad was safe. Because she thought Daniel would never look. Because she thought Daniel was not that kind of man. He still thinks. Daniel stared at the words until his vision narrowed again. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not a happy smile. A controlled one. Because in that moment, he understood the shape of the reversal. She thought she was controlling the story, but the iPad had made him the author. He opened his laptop and emailed his lawyer friend again, this time not hypothetical. He did not write dramatic language. He wrote simply, "I have evidence of an affair and joint funds being used. Need advice on next steps. I will share details once we talk." He hit send. Then he did something that surprised even him. He opened their home security app. Not because he wanted to spy, because he suddenly remembered a small detail. They had installed a doorbell camera last year after a package theft. Olivia had insisted on it. Safety, peace of mind. Daniel scrolled back through past recordings. Most were boring. Delivery drivers, neighbors walking dogs, rain. Then he found a clip from 3 months ago. Olivia leaving with a suitcase on a Friday morning. She had told him she was going to a marketing conference. In the clip, she looked over her shoulder, checking the street, then walked quickly to a car parked down the block. A black sedan, not an Uber. No phone in hand, no hesitation. The driver stepped out. A tall man, dark jacket. He opened the trunk for her. They hugged. Not a coworker hug, a full-body hug. Intimate, familiar. Daniel's throat went tight again. But this time the humiliation was mixed with something else. Relief. Because now he had video evidence, not just messages she could dismiss as fantasy or flirting. A real moment, a real man, a real hug. He paused the clip and zoomed in. The man's face was partly visible. It was Evan. Daniel sat back, letting the reality settle into his bones. He had been living next to a secret that had been physically walking past his front door. He replayed the clip again and again. Each time he felt something shift. The pain was still there, but it was being replaced by determination. He made a copy of the clip and saved it to the same folder. Weekend. Then he wrote a note in his timeline. Doorbell camera confirms physical meetings. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. His breathing was slow now. His mind was clearer than it had been since Friday night. This was the evidence phase, the part where he stops being a victim and becomes someone who can act. But a thought arrived that made his stomach tighten again. If she had been doing this for a year, what else had she been hiding? And then another thought, sharper. If she was willing to take money from their joint account to fund him, what was she planning long term? To leave? To take half the house? To rewrite the story so he looked like the problem? Daniel stared at the rain-streaked window again. He realized he was not just gathering evidence for closure. He was gathering evidence for protection. Because if Olivia had been lying this easily, she could lie again. She could say he was controlling. She could say he was paranoid. She could say the marriage failed because he was distant. She could twist the narrative and walk away clean. Unless he had receipts. The iPad buzzed again. Evan, I hate waiting. Wish you were here already. Olivia, tomorrow night. Be patient. Daniel's pulse jumped. Tomorrow night. Not the weekend. Not just a cabin. There was a plan beyond this. He scrolled up quickly, and then he saw it. A message from Evan, buried among jokes. Once you get him to sign, we are free. Daniel's fingers went numb. Get him to sign. Sign what? He stared at the screen, unable to blink. He scrolled further down. More context. Olivia had replied days ago, I will handle it. He trusts me with paperwork. Daniel felt the room tilt again. Paperwork. Trust. He remembered something that made his stomach drop. A stack of documents on the counter last month. Olivia had asked him to sign a few forms quickly. Just refinance stuff. Lower interest, nothing big. He had signed without reading deeply, because he trusted her. Daniel's hands started shaking, not from sadness but from terror. He stood up so fast the chair nearly fell. He rushed to the drawer where they kept house documents. Mortgage paperwork, tax forms, insurance. He pulled out the folder labeled Refinance. He flipped through it with frantic fingers. He found his signature. Then he found the section that made his blood go cold. A change in title structure, a clause about ownership transfer under specific conditions. Daniel read it twice, trying to understand. His mind refused. He read it again, slower. This was not a simple refinance. This was a move. A move that could shift the house into something that benefited her if the marriage ended. Daniel's mouth went dry. He felt like he had been standing on a floor that was quietly being sawed through for months, and he had smiled while it happened. He grabbed his phone and called his lawyer friend immediately. No voicemail. He picked up. Daniel's voice came out low and tight. I need you to look at something tonight. His friend's tone changed instantly. What happened? Daniel stared at the paperwork in his hands, then at the iPad glowing on the counter, then at the rain outside. He swallowed. My wife did not just cheat, she may have been setting me up to lose my house. There was a pause on the line. Then quietly, do not confront her. Not yet. Send me copies now. Daniel's hands were steady again as he scanned the documents. He scanned the doorbell clip. He scanned the bank statements. He sent them. When he finished, he sat down slowly. The shock returned, but it was different now. This was not just betrayal of the heart. This was betrayal with intent, with planning, with paperwork. Daniel stared at the iPad one more time. Tomorrow night. Be patient. He realized something with a cold certainty. Olivia's weekend was not a weekend. It was a test run, a rehearsal, and if he did nothing, the next step would happen before he even knew what he was losing. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. His mind was moving faster now. He had evidence. He had a lawyer. He had a timeline. But what he needed next was the reversal. A moment where she realized the story she wrote was not the story he would live. He picked up his phone and typed a text to Olivia. Simple. Normal. Drive safe tomorrow. Miss you. He hit send. Then he added a note to his timeline. Phase 3 begins tomorrow. Because now Daniel was not just watching. He was preparing to move. And Olivia had no idea that the husband she thought was clueless had already found the trap she set. She had turned off her phone, but the iPad had kept talking. And it had just told him the most dangerous truth of all. She was not just leaving, she was trying to take everything with her. Monday came slowly. Too slowly for Olivia, too fast for Daniel. She texted just after 7 in the morning. Leaving soon. No signal all night. Missed you. Daniel stared at the message while sitting at the edge of the bed, already dressed for work even though he had called in remote that morning. No signal all night. The lie was so casual now it almost impressed him. He typed back, missed you too, drive safe, want me to pick up dinner tonight? There was a pause before her reply. That tiny delay told him more than the words ever could. Sure, that would be nice. Nice. He set his phone down and looked around the bedroom. The framed wedding photo on the dresser. Her side of the closet, slightly messier than his. The life they had built was still physically intact, but emotionally it had already been evacuated. Daniel stood and walked to the kitchen, coffee in hand, mind running through the plan his lawyer had helped shape the night before. Do not confront emotionally. Do not accuse. Let her talk. Let her lie. Record everything. Keep it calm. Keep it controlled. The goal was not drama. The goal was positioning. By mid-morning, his lawyer had called back. Voice low, focused. That paperwork she had you sign? It is structured so that if you initiate divorce without contest, she gains leverage on the property split. It is not illegal, but it is strategic. Daniel had felt his jaw tighten, so she was not just leaving. She was preparing to land safely while he fell. You have strong counter-leverage, the lawyer continued. Financial misuse. Documented infidelity tied to shared assets. Video evidence, but timing matters. You confront too early, she pivots. Daniel understood. This was no longer just emotional survival. This was negotiation, and Olivia thought she was the only one playing. By late afternoon, Daniel had prepared the house like it was any normal Monday. Lights on, music low, her favorite throw blanket folded on the couch. He even picked up Thai takeout from the place she loved, the one she always said reminded her of their early dating years. The normalcy was part of the reversal, because when truth lands in a calm room, it hits harder. Olivia's car pulled into the driveway at 6:23. Daniel watched through the window, heart steady, breath slow. She stepped out wearing jeans and a sweater, sunglasses pushed into her hair. Weekend glow still on her face. She smiled when she saw him open the door. Hey, she said lightly, stepping inside and setting her bag down. God, it is good to be home. Home. Daniel studied her face. There was no guilt there, only relief. relief that she had returned to a husband who suspected nothing. He kissed her cheek. "Missed you." "I missed you too," she said smoothly. The lie did not even tremble. They ate at the kitchen table. She talked about wine, hiking trails, late-night talks with the girls. Names woven in naturally. Details polished. Daniel nodded at the right times, asked small follow-up questions like a man who wanted to stay connected. Inside, he felt like he was watching an actress rehearse a role she had perfected. When they finished eating, he stood and cleared the plates. Then he said gently, "Hey, before we settle in, can we talk for a minute? Just us." She froze for half a second. It was tiny, but he saw it, then the smile returned. "Of course. Everything okay?" Daniel walked to the living room and sat on the couch. She sat beside him, tucking her legs under herself, body angled toward him in that familiar, intimate posture. The same posture she had used while texting another man from the same couch months ago. Daniel picked up the folder from the coffee table. He did not hand it to her yet. "I need to ask you something," he said calmly. "Okay. Who is Evan?" The color left her face so fast it looked like someone had turned down the brightness on a screen. What? Evan?" Daniel repeated gently. "The man who booked the cabin. The one you told you wished you were with instead of me." Her lips parted, but no words came. Silence stretched. This was the humiliation moment, not screaming, not accusing. Just truth sitting in the room where lies used to breathe. "Daniel, He opened the folder and handed it to her. "Take your time." Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Screenshots, photos, booking confirmations, bank transfers. The doorbell camera still. She stopped at that one. Her eyes widened. You checked the cameras?" "I checked everything." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "This is not what it looks like. It is exactly what it looks like." Her shoulders started shaking. "I never meant for it to go this far." Daniel watched her carefully. He did not feel the urge to comfort her. He felt distance. "You planned this for over a year," he said quietly. "You used our money. You lied every day. You turned off your phone so you could pretend I did not exist." She covered her face with her hands. "I was lonely, Daniel. We were distant. We were distant because you were already somewhere else." She looked up, desperate. "I was going to tell you. When?" No answer. That silence was the evidence she could not rewrite. Then he said the sentence that shifted the entire room. "I also know about the paperwork." Her head snapped up. "What paperwork?" "The refinance documents, the title clause, the timing." Her breathing changed. Not crying now, thinking, calculating. "I don't know what you think you saw. I saw a plan," Daniel said calmly. "I saw you preparing to leave with leverage. I saw you assuming I would sign whatever you put in front of me. That is not fair." "Fair?" Daniel's voice stayed level. "You brought another man into our marriage and financial strategy into our divorce before I even knew we were ending." She stood up suddenly, pacing. "This is insane. You are twisting things." Daniel reached into the folder and pulled out printed copies of the messages. "Once you get him to sign, we are free." He held it out. "Explain that." Her mouth opened, closed. No explanation came. Because there wasn't one that did not confirm everything. The reversal landed quietly. She had built a secret life thinking he was clueless. Now she was the one standing exposed in her own living room. "What do you want?" she whispered. Daniel met her eyes. "I want the truth on record." She blinked. "What?" "I want you to say what happened out loud, no rewriting, no minimizing." She shook her head. "Why?" "Because this conversation is being recorded." Her eyes went wide. "You would not. I already did." Silence fell heavy between them. Not dramatic, final. She sank back onto the couch, and slowly, in a broken voice, Olivia told the story she had hoped to keep buried. How she met Evan at a networking event. How the attention felt exciting. How it became emotional before it became physical. How she convinced herself Daniel was too stable, too predictable, too safe. How she told herself she deserved more. How she planned the weekends. The lies, the money, the paperwork. Daniel listened without interrupting, because this was not about emotion anymore. This was documentation. When she finished, the room felt hollow. "What happens now?" she asked, voice barely there. Daniel handed her another envelope. Inside were the divorce papers his lawyer had prepared that morning. "I filed today," he said. Her head jerked up. "You what?" "I also filed a motion to freeze joint asset transfers until proceedings are complete." She stared at him like he was someone she had never met. "You planned this." "Yes." Tears rolled down her face. "I never thought you would find out," he finished gently. "That is the part that hurts the most." She looked small then, not evil, not monstrous. Just someone who miscalculated the person she married. "I don't want to fight," she whispered. "You already did," Daniel said softly. "You just did it in secret." She nodded slowly, because she knew he was right. The confrontation ended not with shouting, but with clarity. She had tried to leave quietly. He had already closed the exit. And for the first time in over a year, Daniel was no longer the man waiting at home in the dark. Oh, he was the one holding the light. That night, Olivia did not sleep in their bed. She lay curled on the couch downstairs, facing the back of the sofa, crying so quietly it sounded like someone trying not to wake a stranger. The house felt too big, too hollow, like every wall had stepped back to avoid being involved. Daniel lay awake upstairs, staring at the ceiling. No yelling, no slammed doors. Just truth sitting between two floors like a weight neither of them could move. But sometime after 2 a.m, a thought pushed through the exhaustion. Did Evan know yet? Did he know Olivia had been exposed? Or was he still waiting comfortably on the other side of the weekend, assuming Daniel would sign papers and disappear quietly? The thought wasn't jealousy. It wasn't about winning her back. It was about something unfinished, a missing piece. Daniel got out of bed and walked downstairs, phone in hand. He opened the evidence folder again, messages, transfers, bookings. Then he noticed something he hadn't focused on before. Evan's email. Not a personal Gmail, a company address. Carter@carteradvisorygroup.com. Daniel paused. He typed the company name into LinkedIn again, this time scrolling more slowly through Evan's profile. He had already looked at it. But shock makes you miss things. This time he read every line. And one detail made his pulse change. Former risk consultant, Mercer and Hale Analytics. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. Mercer and Hale was his old firm, the place he had worked before moving into his current role. He scrolled further. The dates overlapped. They had worked in the same professional orbit. Not side by side, but close enough to cross paths. A memory surfaced. A networking mixer years ago. A tall guy, confident, asking sharp questions about a deal Daniel had been reviewing at the time. Daniel had thought nothing of it. Just another ambitious consultant. That man had been Evan. Daniel sat back slowly. This was no longer just an affair that grew out of loneliness. Evan had known who he was, long before Olivia ever became part of the picture. Daniel opened Olivia's LinkedIn next. He scrolled down her experience. 2 years ago, she had done freelance marketing for a real estate project. The developer? Vantage Ridge Partners. The same company tied to Evan. Daniel felt a cold clarity settle over him. They had not met randomly at a bar or through a friend. They had met in overlapping professional circles connected to his world. And then he found the message that sealed it, buried far back in the thread from early on. He is exactly like you said, safe, predictable, trusts easily. Daniel did not need to ask who you was. Evan had known about him, had assessed him, had understood the kind of husband Daniel was before he ever made a move. Daniel stared at the dark screen for a long time. The pain shifted again. Less like heartbreak. More like realization. This was not just emotional betrayal. It had elements of calculation. Morning came gray and quiet. Olivia was already at the kitchen table when Daniel came downstairs, eyes swollen, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. He set a few printed pages in front of her. Not screenshots, not hotel receipts, LinkedIn profiles, employment timelines, shared corporate connections. She looked at them, confused at first, then pale. "You knew him through work," Daniel said calmly, "before you ever told me about him." Her lips trembled. "It started as networking. He knew who I was," Daniel continued, "what I did, the kind of life we had built." She shook her head weakly. "It wasn't like that." "Then why did he describe me before you two were even involved?" Silence. Not defensive silence, fearful silence. Because for the first time, Olivia was looking at her own story from the outside. "Did you ever wonder," Daniel asked quietly, "if he was drawn to you, or to the stability around you?" Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they weren't just guilt, they were doubt, the kind that arrives too late. Daniel didn't raise his voice. "I've sent the financial records to my lawyer," he said. "If necessary, there will be a review of the money flow between you and his business." Her head snapped up. "You'd go after him?" "I'm protecting myself," Daniel said evenly. "And if his interest in you had financial strategy attached, he won't want his name anywhere near a courtroom." That was the final move. Not revenge, leverage, because when benefit disappears, true motives surface. A week later, Evan stopped responding. No messages, no calls, no dramatic goodbye, just absence. Olivia learned the truth the hardest way possible. The man she risked her marriage for didn't stay when things became complicated. Daniel stood alone in his new apartment weeks later, city lights reflecting off the water outside his window. He didn't feel victorious. He felt awake. He hadn't lost his wife to a grand love story. He had lost her to someone who saw the life he built before she understood its value. And when that man walked away, the illusion went with him. What remained was painful, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel was no longer living inside a lie. The apartment was smaller than the house, quieter too. No second set of keys on the counter. No shoes by the door that weren't his. No soft hum of another life moving in the background. Just Daniel, a couch that still smelled new, and a wide window overlooking the gray stretch of water beyond the city. The first few nights the silence had felt heavy. Now it felt honest. Not comforting, not lonely, just real. The divorce had gone through faster than most people expected. No dramatic courtroom scenes, no shouting matches over furniture or photos, just paperwork, timelines, and the quiet understanding that the marriage had ended long before the legal system caught up. The financial review had done what it needed to do. The transfers to Evan's company had been documented. The paperwork Olivia had pushed him to sign had been neutralized before it could cost him more than it already had. Evan never reached out again. Not to defend himself, not to explain, not even to argue. He vanished the moment the situation stopped being convenient. That, more than anything, told Daniel what he needed to know. Some men chase excitement, others chase advantage, and when advantage disappears, so do they. Olivia sent one last message weeks later. "I never thought it would end like this." Daniel read it sitting at his small kitchen table, morning light spilling across the surface. "Neither did I," he typed back. He didn't add anger, didn't add blame, because by then he understood something that had taken him weeks to accept. The affair wasn't just about love gone wrong. It was about value misunderstood. Olivia had mistaken stability for dullness, predictability for weakness, trust for something that could be quietly exploited. Evan had simply stepped into the space where appreciation had faded, not because Daniel had nothing to offer, but because someone else recognized the life Daniel had built before she did. And once that illusion shattered, there was no dramatic villain left to fight. Just two people facing the consequences of different choices. One evening, Daniel stood on his balcony as rain drifted across the city lights below. The air was cool, sharp in his lungs. He thought about the moment everything changed. An iPad lighting up on a kitchen counter. A message not meant for him. At the time, it had felt like destruction. Now, he saw it differently. It had been a warning he almost didn't get. If that screen had stayed dark, he might have signed more papers, trusted more lies, lost more than a marriage. Instead, he lost an illusion. And illusions, he realized, are far more dangerous than painful truths. He didn't walk away with victory, he walked away with clarity. Clarity that love without respect erodes quietly. Clarity that trust without awareness becomes vulnerability. Clarity that being the safe one is not a flaw, unless you hand your safety to someone who no longer values it. Daniel didn't hate Olivia. He didn't even hate Evan. Hate required emotional energy he no longer wanted to spend on the past. What he felt instead was something steadier, boundaries, understanding. A quiet refusal to ignore small signals ever again. He had learned the difference between comfort and connection, between routine and partnership, between someone who shares a life and someone who just occupies the same space. Inside, his phone buzzed with a calendar reminder for a weekend hiking trip he had signed up for with a local group. Something he would have never done before. Something small. Something new. He smiled faintly. Not because life had magically improved, but because for the first time in a long time, his future didn't depend on whether someone else chose to stay. It depended on whether he kept choosing himself. Daniel took one last look at the water, then stepped back inside and closed the door. The apartment was quiet. Not empty, just his. And that was no longer something to fear. It was something to build from.